How do we give in a manner that transforms society, but most importantly, transforms the philanthropist? I have personally never met a poor philanthropist. In fact, there is no nobility in being poor. It is said that 30 years into democracy, poverty still has primarily a black and feminine face. Because if wealth is the inevitable results of both hard work and enterprise, then every woman in Africa should be a dollar billionaire. That they are not, there must be forces bigger than just hard work and enterprise. And I'm hoping that by having this conversation this evening, maybe just maybe, we might be able to have an opportunity to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, how do we change the system? Because the system succeeds, not just the individuals. When your boss wants you to be successful, you will succeed. When I want to set you up for success, I'll do everything in my power to make sure that you are successful. Transformative philanthropy. Transformation means a fundamental change in shape and form, so that this that we are creating tomorrow has absolutely no resemblance to this that it is replacing. It is not reformation. Reformation is a chameleon that changes color only but not form. This is a pupa that becomes a butterfly. And a butterfly bears no resemblance to the pupa. This is a tadpole that becomes a frog. And when you look at the same, you can't see the resemblance anywhere. Reformation, it's tinkering on the edge, but leaving the substance absolutely intact. So we are poor, not because we are lazy. We are poor because the die has always been cast against black people. And black is defined as anybody that is excluded on the basis that you are not white. So if I don't like my neighbor, I leave my neighbor alone. I don't have to do anything more. But the system does not leave us alone. It spends time, energy, and effort to oppress, to subjugate, to exclude. Because the very survival of the system depends on our poverty. So, Capitec is a bank born here in Stellenbosch. It has 20 million customers. 98% of those customers are you and I. Pepco, 95% of the people that buy from this store are you and I. Therefore, if we changed that pattern, a lot of businesses would not survive. All the retail stores, all of them, they get their money from our patronage. And not once have they deemed it fit to appoint a black CEO to say, this is the person who understands our customers. Therefore, they'll be able to talk to them in their own idiomatic expression. But they continue to appoint other white males. Some of them would import them from Australia. So for 9 months, we teach them how we do things. When it could have been cheaper, easier, much more profitable, sustainable in the short term, but building this notion of long-term resilience by taking any one of you. But if they did, then it would negate the stereotype. It will not feed the narrative. Therefore, we are poor, not by accident, but by design. So the duration of oppression is never determined by the oppression. It's always determined by the oppressed. It's only when the oppressed wake up one day and say this much and no further that the system changes. Therefore, when we want to be entrepreneurs, how do we even start? Who do we sell to? Because most of our people don't have the means, let alone the ability to pay. "30 years into democracy. Poverty still has primarily a black and feminine face. Poverty equals black, and now black equals poverty. The two are not only intertwined, but interchangeable. We've even begun to believe that's who we are. Not knowing and accepting that we are much more than what we've become. To realize that, we need to go back and say, but what went wrong? And that's what I want us to have a conversation about today. Because until and unless we change the system, it doesn't matter what you do. It will be like a spit in the bucket. Because the system will always work against us. And just to understand that, in 1910, when this republic was created, there was a dilemma that the British faced. To give this South Africa to the black elites that were much more educated, were successful from it, or to give it to the Afrikaners who were pregnant, barefoot, and in the kitchen. To make that decision, they asked themselves 3 things that is important to them. The first, they said, we want a crucible, but sustainable crucible of cheap labor. Number 2, they said, we want to have the first right of refusal to the minerals of this country, especially gold. We must be the first one to say, no, we've had enough. Thirdly and lastly, they said, these blacks must go to the belly of the earth, risk it all, a dance with death, come up with the diamonds, and we will determine the price. Hence the creation of the London Sales Organization. Where in the world have you ever seen somebody toil to plant some tomatoes and potatoes? And then there's harvest. And then somebody says, but I will tell you the price. That's exactly where we have been. And that system we have not touched. We have not transformed. It is clear that even the people who call themselves our leaders were so eager to get into political office that we never fundamentally thought long and hard about what are we going to do with this power to fundamentally change the system and therefore the economy of this country. Pretty much like a dog chasing a car. So when a car stops, it is abundantly clear that all they wanted is to live like the Afrikaners and the National Party. Live at Mahlambandlovu Presidential Guest House in Pretoria, or Danehays in Pretoria, and travel from the one to the other. Have a car here and entourage here, and have a car there and entourage there. That they wanted to be driven around, not in one car with a security car behind and one in front, but 10 if you are the deputy president. So imagine if you are the president. To be guarded against your own people that you say you represent. So much so that they continued to have the State of the Nation address at 2 in the afternoon, when their own people were still working. And only now have we just changed it. 30 years into democracy. We make a choice. I didn't touch anything. It's not me.
Thank you so much. Proceed.
Just so that I don't have to touch anything again. To take this power and fundamentally change this. We still expect our people to come to Parliament here in Cape Town, and sometimes to go to the Union buildings in Pretoria. And yet, if we really wanted to change the symbols of power, we would have taken this Parliament to where the people are and create a marquee in Soweto and have a conversation with the people. Even the measure of who is educated and clever and therefore know what they're talking about is English. Therefore, if you speak with any other language except English, we switch off. We don't even want to listen to it. And therefore, if you try this English and you break it, we look and say, you must be less educated, therefore a fool. But everywhere else in the world, they speak in their own language. I worked for a company called Otis Elevators as the managing director in 1996, just 2 years into democracy. I reported for the first 3 years. In Madrid, my boss was Mario Abajo. For those 2 years, I reported to France. In both those countries, when I went to these board meetings, in Spain, they spoke in Spanish. And very few of those Spanish senior executives understood English and were fluent in English. They were the second most profitable in 222 countries and locations where Otis as a president. The French, exactly the same. Very few French people could express themselves in English. They were the #1 city market. We become free. Our literacy rate in South Africa, of the 60.02 million South Africans, is less than 50%. But we go to these townships and electioneer in English. Therefore, it's more than just foreign converses pour from our lips, but foreign ropes hang from our necks. It's those symbols of power that if you wanted to change, it will send a strong and unequivocal message to say, not only are we in political office, but we're in power to also change the economy. 30 years into democracy, actually we've become poor. because your money now buys less than what you could 10 years ago. So our discretionary purchasing power and disposable income has been eroded. We've introduced new nomenclature into our language. Load shedding. This entity that was created by Van der Bijl with 19,000 people to give us 56 gigawatt nameplate electricity. Only for 10% of the population, which was white at that time. Van der Bijl, by the way, also created ISCO, and we also created the IDC. We take over ESCO in 27th of April 1994. And we say in our plans that we want to build 4 million more houses. We want to electrify the rate of 10,000 homes a month, every month. But the generation capacity is still the same. It used to serve 10%. We say now it must serve 100%, but we did nothing to the generation capacity. So load shedding started in February of 2008. That is 16 years ago. In 16 years, we haven't been able to solve this problem. So how can we look at ourselves seriously in the mirror and say, but we should take ourselves seriously? But how do we even expect the others, who by the way don't like us, are waiting to demonstrate that we are going to fail and become yet another failed African country? So when a minister stands up and says, no, we're going to stop load shedding by December of 2023, and they tell you in 2023, and they haven't done it in 16 years, they're not very believable, are they? But why do I make an example with electricity? Because it affects all of us. Because electricity is the fourth means of production, when land is the primary means of production. It affects all of us. Because by not having electricity in 2022 audited figures, the CSIR does a piece of work together with the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. And they say in 2022, they measure the cost of unavailable electricity. They put that figure at 7.6 gigawatt of electricity. So I'm amongst friends. Let's say it's 6,000 megawatts, just to round off the figures. At 80 rand per megawatt, we know the price is 85. That's 540 billion rand that we lost in the economy in 2022. Imagine how many jobs we could have created. But at stage 6, we lose 4 billion rands a day. Between stages, it's 500 million. So we wiped off an entire 2 percentage points in just 22. So in the last 10 years, this economy has never grown by 2 percentage points. In the last 10 years. The average GDP growth is 0.8. Population growth is 1.5. So it means we're going backward. Let me put it simply. So when the interest rate is 8% and inflation is 4%, it stands to reason that the economy must grow by at least 4% just to stand still. That's what it means. I'm doing crude arithmetic, not mathematics.
Yes.
Now we have watershed. And watershedding is only because of two reasons. Ailing infrastructure and lack of maintenance. That's all it is. The community of Hammanskraal in Gauteng, just outside of Pretoria, for 15 years they've been without clean water. They now suffer from cholera. There's only one vaccine for cholera. It is clean running water and a toilet that fresh. That's all. We still have 3,752 people clean toilets in Limpopo alone. 30 years into democracy. So we have failing electricity, failing water reticulation. The last one that I want to touch on briefly is law and order. That touches all of us because none of us feel safe in our own homes. In Joburg, the walls are getting higher, the electricity voltage increases. So without law and order, safety and security, who are we and what are we? And when you look at the root cause of our problems, yes, first is because we never really planned about what we're going to do with this power. But at the heart of it, when we remove all the English, it's greed. Not service delivery, just greed. So we have another new nomenclature called state capture. So we didn't invent state capture. Everywhere else in the world, when there's a project, a road to be built, there's $10 US for the road. Maybe 8 goes to build the road, and the people still have the road. And 2 gets retained. Here there's $10 million US to build the road, and they steal 12. And the road doesn't get that. So it's not bribery, stealing, and cheating. So state capture, it's much more insidious than that. So state capture, in 5 years, we have stolen 1.5 trillion South African rand. That's 1,500 billion South African rand. That's 2/3 of what Edward Mcetywa collects in a year from businesses and individuals. In the 9 wasted years, we siphon off on average 200 billion rands just to the 2 Zupta families. So the real cost is to you and I. But we know that Edward Mcetywa, this last financial year ended the 29th of February 2024. He collected 2 trillion rands. The year before, he also collected 2 trillion rands. After VAT refunds to businesses and individuals, he still banked 1.78 trillion South African rands. Therefore, if you do the math, over a period of 10 years, we collect on average 1.4 trillion. So divide 1.4 trillion by 60 million South Africans. There's no reason why anybody should go to bed hungry. Absolutely not. So South Africa is not a poor country, just poorly managed. The value, the utility of having tonight is in the dialogue, in the conversation, in the questions and answers. Yeah. So I was told that I should shut up and take some questions and answers. But let me just conclude by saying, so how does this all manifest? Just to bring it all to you. So South Africa now holds the world record for all the wrong reasons. We have the highest cash in transit heist in the world. we took over from Brazil. So the last quarter of 2023, just in 3 months, we had 3,752 cash in transit items. That's more than the whole of Brazil has had in the whole year. And Brazil used to be the one that has the highest cash in transit heights in the world. We took over from, but we took over something else from Brazil. We are now the most unequal society in the world with a Gini coefficient of 0.63. We're entrepreneurs. We have the highest SME failure rate in the world. So we chose to be a member of BRICS. Yeah. Before they expanded BRICS, when you look at all our BRICS counterparts, new jobs created by small and medium enterprises, more than 60% of them are created by SMEs. Here in South Africa, that figure is less than 50% of new jobs created by SMEs. But we also have the highest unemployment rate in the world. Officially, it's 32.6%. But remember, officially, it's called the narrow definition. It excludes those people that have given up looking for a job in the last 36 months. So during COVID, which lasted 750 days, you can see that we're fooling ourselves. So the expanded definition, the ILO definition, is 46% unemployment. Youth unemployment, it's 60%. On an expanded definition, it's 74.9. I'm amongst, let's say 75%. So 8 out of 10 young people are sitting at home twiddling their thumbs. Nothing to do. When young people of military age are sitting at home doing nothing, not only are we asking for trouble, but we are actively inviting it. And let me submit that the 2 weeks in July of 2021 are going to happen again, and again, and again. Our unemployment is worse than that of countries at war. That's how bad it is. I said, how does this manifest? This inequality is widening. Racism is at an all-time high. It is black graduates that are roaming the streets hopelessly. Public education has collapsed. Since when is 30% an acceptable mark? Public health care continues to fail the poor and the vulnerable. Crucial infrastructure that we inherited from people who don't even like us, like rail and roads and ports, is laying barren. But lawlessness has now become an epidemic. So let me leave you with a challenge, because Mcetywa says we need to make a decision, isn't it? Even not deciding is making a decision. So the challenge for me is 30 years into democracy, the Department of Education and Training led by Dr. Blayton Zimand also does a piece of work. I spoke about 2022, so let me use 2022 figures. They say we've got 26 public universities, 1.5 million students in these 26 public universities. That collectively have historical debt of 16.5 billion rands, 9.2 billion of which is irrecoverable. $100,000 students finished their studies, but could not graduate because they owe money to the university, therefore swelling the ranks of the unemployed, exacerbating food insecurity, but also period poverty. $16.5 billion is historical debt, right? So if I exclude the 3.5 million small and medium enterprises, because by nature they are survivalist. And I start only with 1.5 million medium-sized companies that have a turnover of 300 million rand or above. And I look at the 400 companies listed on the Johannesburg Securities Exchange in 2010. Now that figure is 289. And I look at the 60 companies that hold securities in the 80 private equity firms. And I say to these companies, all of them have what is called the Corporate Social Investment Program. All of them. 98% of them have at least 4 focus areas. Of those 4 focus areas, 100% of them, at least one of them has something to do with education. So if we say to these companies, we're not even asking you to make more money or to increase your profits. Just on the money that your board has already approved as CSI, if you put each company a measly, no less than 1 million rand in a historical debt fund, 1 million rand. And then we look at government and say, you created this mess in the first place, so match us rent for rent. You know, not in 30 years of democracy. In 1 year, we wipe off the entire 16.5 billion and therefore give these young people, who are not future leaders, but the current leadership, hope and an opportunity to look forward in space and in time, rather than solving the problems of their parents. Education matters. Because it's only through education that one can transcend social classes. Education matters because when one steadily bends the midnight oil, one gains access to the domain of knowledge and wisdom, the world of many, the world that cannot be conquered without a persistent crusade. In fact, politicians hate educated blacks because it is impossible to fool educated blacks.
What do you say after this then? If you are lazy to think, Prof forces you to think. Because number 1, doesn't rush the conversation. 2, he hits every point effective for you to think of. Thank you, Prof. We're going to take question and answers. We have our dinner arranged for 8 o'clock, so we are at 25 to now. So I'm going to use the 25 minutes to engage, because I want him to answer some couple of things. I'm sure you want to engage him, just to ask some few things. There are some things that he touched on that are in the book, which you're going to read further on them. One of them is when he says education and says, you make agriculture, you make English compulsory, right? As in the education system of South Africa, but to make agriculture an option. And Prof went on and said, you are creating well English spoken individuals who are hungry. They speak so flashy English. We are by Mcetywa, where I come from. They speak like flashy English, Mr. Kaka. My chief, Mr. Clark. But that isn't this way, but poverty is hitting them. Because agriculture, Dololo, English is food. Yeah? And Nomakuluake said, now I'm showing that I read the book. His grandmother says, someone says education is expensive. And then Nomakuluka property, check ignorance. You're saying education is expensive? Check ignorance, how expensive it is. So you ignore it on peril, what Prof was talking about here tomorrow. Please, let's engage him quickly. I would like you want to stand here?
Let me.
You wanna, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, let's do the, can you help me guys?
As one No, they are the mics, but I think we hear each other quite okay.
Is it fine without mics?
Is there anybody who's hard of hearing?
Let's start this side first. Mr. Kosi, one. Anybody this side? Question? No, wait, Mr. Kosi. I just want to identify you first. I got no question. Near right? Oh, Mr. Schwager, Mr. I forgot the name. No, yes. Mr. Class and Mr. Clark. So let's start from Mr. Can you try and see without the microphone?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
No, he's a loud black.
My name is Tony Lekosi. I am a pastor of a church, so the voice carries when you put a message across. I manage local economic development department. Prof, I broached this earlier on. I'm not going to ask you a question, but I would like to invite you to throw a few pearls of wisdom. Maybe just to preface that, thank you to Younger Investment for inviting me. Took me 4 days at my workplace with your invitation to ask to be released to attend this evening. This function. But just yesterday afternoon, I received an email that says, sorry, we regret to inform you, you cannot attend that function because it has nothing to do with our work. I took leave. The reason for leave is I manage local economic development. I have more than 200, I've got 180 small businesses that are in my database that are trained. I've got 260 entrepreneurs. All of them are the people that I've worked with. Prof, the idea of local economic development is supposed to be a bridge between business, which is where business of businesses, business and government, in terms of writing policies and all of that. These entrepreneurs that you are looking at do their work at my terrain. We are where the rubber hits the road. And it's 30 years later. All I'm really inviting you to do is to say, given that as the broader context, what is it that we are not touching on? How do we move this ship? What are some of the things that we should be considering? Because when they don't get no businesses, when they have these challenges, they come at my door. And I'm here, Younger is here, and people are saying, how do we rescue this ship? Thank you, Prof.
Sure. This hits the nail on the head. So I use the question to have a broader conversation about some of the systemic issues that are confronting us, but also systematic issues. So first, about Basile. A lot of them depend on just the granny's pension. But it lasts them the whole month. It lasts them the whole month because the way we grew up is that granny would get this pension money, they'll buy 12.5 of maize meal, but also of bread flour, a little bit of sugar, nothing else. Because they had a plot of land, they could plant the tomatoes, the leaves, and there was a local economy. I'm talking about A-line. So we never grew up buying bread. Buying bread to us is foreign. Because they would bake bread and would eat freshly made bread every day. So this notion of going and buying Sasko is very foreign to us. I said, but as entrepreneurs, who is going to buy from us? Because some of us don't even have the ability to pay. You remember I made that statement? But I didn't conclude it, because when you look at the people that have benefited in the 30 years of our democracy, who've made the most amount of money, clearly it's not us, because we're still poor. But it's the Afrikaners, it's the Jewish people, and the Muslims. One, because they had capital. So if there's a service station that is being sold, they want 5 million rand, that pumps 400,000 liters a month. The Muslim community on Tuesday can say, I need 5 million, by Friday, they pay. You and I, we still want the same. You go to NEF and SIFA. 9 months later, they are still asking for your grandmother's certificate. So the ones with capital are making more money. In fact, the Afrikaners are saying today, if we knew that this ANC-led government would be so good to us, damn it, would have let these blacks freer. And when you look at these three communities as to how successful they are, they've got 10 secrets that really make them successful, that are common to all of them. And I said in the interest of time, I'll touch just on 3. So the first says, do you as a family and as a community regularly sit together around the table to talk about how to make money? He said, but we don't even know the difference between income and cash. Just talk regularly about to make money. Secondly, they say, do you as a family and as a community buy from each other and one another? So Jewish people are not looking for convenience. They can subscribe to the Sunday Times. It gets delivered into their gate. They wake up in the morning with a gown and slippers. They take it indoors and they read it. That's what blacks do, not them. They shower, they walk, and they pass 6 stores. And they go a kilometer away and they buy from another Jewish shop. And they don't ask for a discount. They pay full price because they know I'm investing in my own children's future. What do black people do? They go to the lady who sells tomatoes on the side of the road. Because he's a bit wealthy, he says, how much is 1 tomato? Whatever. But if I buy 20, you give me a 30% discount, they take. After that, before he gets home, he goes to Marble restaurant. And he buys a full meal. To show that he's not a poor black, he doesn't tip 10%. He tips 30%, so that he's just not taken for granted. Do you, as a family and as a community, buy from each other? The last thing, I said, do you as a family and as a community invest in and refer business to each other and one another? So the Jews are buying from Jews people. The Stellenbosch Afrikaners are buying from other Stellenbosch Afrikaners. They invest in that. They don't go to the banks, and the Muslims do the same. So if you are selling insurance, the Jews are not going to buy it from you because they buy from other Jewish people. The Afrikaners are not. Huh? So who's going to buy from you? That's what I meant. But local economic development, there was an economy. Even in the township, there were shopkeepers. We went to those shops and bought. There was an economy. The one thing that we didn't do when we became free is to learn from what has happened everywhere else in the world. And history is replete with examples. If you put a mall in Alexandria, it kills the